Malign portents. Dying star. The stellarium was a whirring mass of concentric stone circles. It occupied a chamber as wide and open as a city square, orbited by glowing spheres and cascades of vibrant colour. The glorious expanse of the etheric void was depicted in such maddening complexity that only the ancient minds of the Slan could truly comprehend it. Malign was a star priest, a humble skink servant of these god beings, and such matters were far beyond his inquisitive mind. Yet, even he could tell that something momentous and terrifying was occurring. Stars were withering in the void. There was no violently beautiful act of celestial law in effect, no natural cycle of existence coming gracefully to a close. This was murder, slow and purposeful, carried out on a cosmic scale. The diminutive creature watched in mounting horror as the blazing lights of the orrery faded and became black as coal, the star blood that gave them vital life draining away into nothing. The tapestry of the cosmos was once more being unmade. Yet this was not the work of the eternal enemy. Malign was sure of it. There was a pattern here, a subtlety quite at odds with the unrestrained depredations of the dark gods, a plan inconceivably complex in scale and woven with the patience of aeons. A pale of darkness fell across the grand star chamber. For a moment, Malign thought that he heard a chorus of mocking whispers, laughter emanating from the shadows. His frill rippled with unease, and reflexively he raised his serpent staff. Silence, he hissed, bobbing his head. Nothing could breach the temple ship of Aximahotl, not without alerting Narek Gar and his sentinels.
"The master must awaken,"
he said. His chirping voice sounded small and fearful in the silence of the golden halls. He reached and scampered up the stairs. Reaching the highest gallery, he pressed his clawed hands into a shaped depression in the facing wall. The glyph stone glowed azure. A doorway yawned open. Beyond, a bubbling stream of crystal-clear liquid ran down the center of a circular passage lined with bricks of gold. The star priest followed the path, and the soothing trickle of the blessed waters calmed his racing heart and focused his mind. The path wound on, circling back in on itself in a maddening series of switchbacks and spiraling ascents. Malign passed rows of gleaming ziggurats, surrounded by motes of blinding starlight. He strode on amidst shifting blocks of burnished gold that swirled and rearranged themselves in a constant, maddening dance. The star priest eventually came to a vast spherical cavern with a single bridge of gleaming tiles leading across empty space. As he walked, Malign peered down to the floor of the world chamber, leagues below. There lay a great expanse of jungle, gouged by glittering river deltas. He felt a tinge of longing. It had been too long since he hunted with his spawn-kin, since he had smelt the sweet scent of swamp air and felt the warmth of sun-baked rock under his skin. But it was all a distant dream. His master needed him, and Malign would serve Lord Xanathamus until lonely death if it was asked of him. The geometry of the temple ship should have been impossible to navigate by any mortal measure, but to the skink it was familiar and reassuring. At the far side of the bridge he entered another passage, and found himself at the foot of his master's altar. The pyramid climbed high, its summit lost in a swirl of mists. A seething mass of serpents and lizards poured down the engraved steps. They parted before Malign like a living river as he ascended. At the top of the altar, a throne of carved obsidian hung in the air beneath a storm cloud of etheric energy. Upon this throne sat his lord.
"Master!"
trilled Malign, his voice piping high as he rushed forward. He feared his lord was dead. The master of the temple ship was slumped and motionless. Its bloated body was not its usual vibrant green, but grey and withered as a shed skin. The eyes were sunken and corpse-like, and his face was marked with blotches of dark purple-black bruises. Malign closed his eyes as he placed his hands upon his lord's forehead. For many agonizing moments he felt nothing. Then, mercifully, the slightest of sparks flashed through him, a single flickering of consciousness. The Star Priest sagged with relief, but it was a fleeting sensation. Maquat had never felt so alone, so helpless. Death and disaster were near at hand, and without the Star Master's infinite wisdom to guide him, he was lost in a void of indecision. He stood, gazing at the ruined form of his master. Above, the celestial energies boiled and swirled, and in the depths of that storm, Maquat saw the glittering constellation of Sotek's fangs, burning with fierce fatality amidst the turmoil.
The fate of worlds falls to lesser creatures,
the Star Priest whispered. A course of action had entered his mind. It was drastic, blasphemous even, yet he could not stand by while darkness rose to swallow all. Narak Gar stood sentinel before the great doors of the spawning chambers, as motionless as a statue. The Sunblood looked as though he was hewn from obsidian by an unskilled sculptor. Scars and burns covered his grey-green scales from snout to claw, and the club-like ridge of the Saurus's skull was gouged horribly above his left eye, an old wound caused by a cornate axe. His eyes did not even flicker towards Maquat as the Star Priest approached.
"You are not Star Master,"
Narak Gar growled.
"No pass."
Lord Sarantamus will not come, chirped Maquat. He entered the long sleep and will not awaken. It falls to us, Honoured One.
Pitiless eyes finally snapped across to meet the skink's own. He tried not to shrink before that ancient stare. The Sunblood was old, even for his kind, and his list of victories against the dark gods was beyond recounting.
There is ancient power rising, Maquat said. Death saps the light from the stars and smothers the realm in darkness and fear. We must act. The spawning cycle must be brought forward. We must make ready for war.
"You are not Star Master."
"He will not come," repeated Maquat. "Our master lies dying. The lights of the constellations fade if we do not intervene."
Narak Gar growled softly, and the Star Priest's acute danger sense urged him to take flight. Yet he stood his ground determined, meeting the Saurus warrior's eyes with as much boldness as he could muster.
"Do you not wish to fight?" he asked. "How long has it been since your club tasted the blood of the unclean?"
The Sunblood stood still and silent for a long while. Hours passed, but the skink knew the nature of the Saurus mind well enough to do nothing. At last, the sentinel stepped back and struck his obsidian club against the door behind him. The sound resonated thunderously through the halls. A moment later, the doors began to rumble open, and the Sunblood stood aside to let Maquat pass. The skink trembled as he entered the spawning chamber. A great circular path skirted the edge of the lake, its dark waters placid and shimmering. Great golden wheels were built into the walls, marked with hieroglyphs and sacred wards, and the ceiling was open to the heavens. Blessed starlight rippled across the gestation pool. On all sides, helmed guards stood vigilant, their spears and clubs held in steady claws. They did not move a muscle as Maquat passed by, on his way to a raised dais at the end of the chamber. He stepped up to the glyph stone in the center of the platform, and his hand hovered an inch from its shimmering surface. Never before had a lowly Star Priest been given such a terrible responsibility. It was no small thing to accelerate the cycle of spawning. Seraphon birthed too early were often prone to fits of bestial rage, unable to control the predatory impulses of their primordial selves. Yet, Maquat could see no other option. Steeling his mind, he pressed his claw down upon the glyphstone, as he had seen his master do so many times before. There was a deep grinding sound before the thunderous roar of rushing liquid. The golden wheels began to spin, and water gushed out in frothing torrents. Writhing shapes could be seen within the deluge, the protean forms from which the armies of the stars would grow. The warm air became humid, and then swelteringly hot. Maquat watched the pool bubble and boil with new life. A chorus of shrill screams filled the air, frenzied and agonized, spilling forth from half-formed mouths. Blood stained the waters.
"Born with hate,"
said Narak Gar, causing Maquat to jump. The Sunblood had approached with surprising stealth.
"Born in pain. Pain gives strength."
"They will need it."
the Star Priest said. Narok Gar growled in agreement.
I summon Star Hosts,
The old warrior said.
Where to strike, Star Priest?
The Amethyst Realm,
replied Maquette.
It is from there that the decay spreads, stealing the life from all it touches. The light of Sotek will guide us, Honored One. I only hope that we are not too late.